Hello, and welcome to our next episode of Essential Intelligence. This is for December of 2017. I know we haven't actually done that many, but we like to make a note of things. Today we're here with your boy TurboTabs. TurboTabs, how you doing?
Yeah, doing good, doing all right.
Coming to us, coming to us straight from I think 1998 with your
Looks like it.
the worst webcam I think I've ever seen.
Who uses webcams in 2017, man? Come on.
Exactly.
I've got a mobile phone. That would have been an idea. I should have just used the mobile phone instead. But
probably should have
pulled this out of a box from the attic, and it's still somewhat working. It's a bit grainy, but it does the job.
I appreciate that you went into your attic just to find something to be on the show.
Well, it's very easy to get into the attic, you know, so it's not too hard. It's like literally, you know, those sort of rooms that got converted from an attic. So it's just like a separate
your current room looks like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like you can see the little poster out supporting the entire house. So it's not far. It's just like a little like open the door. So
fair enough. We also have Nuze, returning regular. Nuze, how's it going?
Hello, I am doing good, Eepily. How are you?
I'm pretty okay. I said we're a little bit later than we expected. Things didn't go massively according to plan. Unfortunately, anyone looking for aggro will not find him here this week. Things have occurred, and basically, he ain't gonna be here. So unlucky. We will get more or less straight into things though. As a brief rundown for anyone wanting to get an idea of what the whole plan of the show is going to be, we're gonna have three main sections. We're gonna start off with talking about the E2F12 Grand Finals, Ascent versus Swift. Which is not Ascent versus Swift of America or probably Brazil soon. Those grand finals. We're going to do ESEA grand finals, Veritech versus Swift NA, and then we're going to have an entire section right at the end just for a variety of different announcements we're going to go through, because apparently in the world of Essentials there's going to be a lot of different things happening. So more or less, I think we go straight into E2F12, if everyone's good.
Sure,
cool.
Why not?
I will set the scene a little bit. Right, so E2F12 season, what is it? Help me out. Season 28. Okay, so grand finals. We had Ascent versus Swift. Roster's a little bit iffy, though. Swift had, you could argue, one, maybe two Mercs, don't know. Basically, they lost Ali at some point during the playoffs, more or less vanished. They planned on having Cadus. They planned on having Cadus for the grand final up until, I believe, maybe a few hours, maybe one day before, but Cadus broke his mouse, so he was gone. He was, I think he watched the game with like a £5 wireless Amazon mouse or something. He wasn't really going to play like that, so they actually got their main demo Ali back. Absolutely no idea. So Ali was replacing Cadus, which was replacing Ali. That definitely makes sense. And Tiger couldn't play grand finals because of work commitments, so they had funds merking for Tiger. Ascent also had a merc in the form of Thalash, who was replacing Neo, because I think Neo's basically just vanished and doesn't really do things anymore. So Thalash also merked previously in playoffs for Ascent, so he had a bit of time to scrim with them. It wasn't like quite so much of like a last minute weird kind of thing. So not quite the full rosters we've seen throughout the course of the season, but probably kind of like close enough really to get an idea of what to expect. Going into it, Swift won the upper brackets because obviously E2F12 is a double elimination format, so they get two chances to get knocked out. Swift basically went through in the easiest run, winning the upper brackets, so they came into the best of 5 grand finals with 1 map advantage. So in order for Ascent to win, they needed to win 3 maps. In order for Swift to win, they needed to win only 2. And that more or less brings us to the grand finals. Who wants to start us off talking about, say, first couple maps? How do we want to go about it?
So, it's best of 4. The 1 map advantage for Swift. So Ascent needed to win 3 of the 4 maps played on the night, and Swift only needing 2. So, going into it early, I don't think Swift would have been too worried as long as they can get 1 map on the board, but obviously it didn't go too well straight out the gate, because the first map was Reckoner. I don't remember if Ascent and Swift had played on that in the upper bracket final, because there was 1 map that Ascent had taken off Swift that time, and I think that was what caused Ali to leave. But if it was Reckoner, something to think about. Anyway, first map goes 3-2 2-2 draw within the normal time, and then the golden cap. I'm not sure how that played out. I can't remember exactly, but it went to Ascent in the end.
It was definitely close. Like, the recurring kind of theme first couple maps was that everything was super, super close between, like, for both teams. Like, not that both teams were playing perfectly by any means, but it's just they were making as many mistakes as each other. And, like, the first map definitely, like, Reckoner was super, super, like, back and forward, pretty close. Like, it was, like, a decent amount of rounds got on the board, and if I remember, I think it was a decent length golden cap. Either way, it wasn't a roll by any means. It was definitely a much better performance from Ascent, a much stronger performance than I was perhaps expecting.
I remember watching the Reckoner match, and it started off very heavily favoured in Swift. Like, the majority of the game, they had it under control. They had a cushy 2-round lead, and I was thinking, oh god, it was going to be one of those grand finals where you just smash the enemy team and their spirits are down, and it's just a whitewash, and Swift pick up the check. Well, ETF12 still did prize money, but still, they were just going to pick up the little pixel trophy and put it in the cabinet. But then they just did this really weird comeback at 3 minutes. And nobody really expected it coming, and it must have rattled Swift to no end. 3 minutes, 2 rounds brought back. Does not that was one hell of an opening. Nobody shocked. Is nobody?
I was impressed. I was impressed. I want to clarify. I was impressed by Ascent. Like, maybe not the entirety of the grand finals, because there were some moments, but first 2 maps, I was really, really impressed at how well Ascent were playing. Like, it's not to say they were necessarily like a much worse team. I think you would probably say they were like the underdogs going into it, because Swift has some like huge names, and they've got a lot of the real star fragging potential, a lot of big egos on that team. But going into it, like, it didn't look in any way like it just seemed that Ascent were actually playing as a team, whereas Swift's kind of way of doing things, like I said, like Ascent. Like, let's be real, going into the actual playoffs, Ascent was basically one of the only teams actually still scrimming regularly. Swift basically stopped scrimming sensibly. They were just like, like, whatever, we'll just like play the game. Same was more or less true for Low Panda, as far as I'm aware. Lego was still scrimming, but they more or less got pounded like quite early on. So, like, in the last part of the playoffs, Ascent was the only team which was actually like a team playing, instead of a bunch of guys thrown together who occasionally play every now and then. And I think that definitely showed. Like, they didn't have the raw fragging power, but they actually
he's getting in really deep, and he just
were playing together, and they were like playing methodically enough to kind of counter that.
And I think that's the reason they upset 2 teams that placed above them in the regular season. Yeah, they were actually playing together, and they had pretty decent team play. Like, they held their own against Swift in the final.
I think. Go on.
I just wanted to say that they're a fine example of like a team with their own little style as well. Like, usually you see some teams kind of playing, like, say, trying to execute their best 7 impression or something like that. But no, this strikes me as a team that really wanted to play in a certain way, like just playing around Elacor, just kind of doing this whole, we don't need a pocket soldier, we don't even need any sort of pocket, we'll just kind of have 2 roamers just kind of kicking here in there, and sometimes we'll throw some heals onto callback or fluo depending on what week they're deciding whose pocket. But just playing off of Elacor, and just they were a wonderful example as well of just a team that seemed like they had small goals in mind at the start of the season, and they were like, okay, we've met that goal. Let's what more can we do now? We'll aim for this and we'll aim for that, and they get going higher and higher and higher and higher. And even they were shocking themselves, like, yeah, this is pretty far. But even they were going into the grand final, they were a bit skeptical. Or at least I know Ombrak was a little bit skeptical. He was kind of setting things up as like, oh well, we're happy to say how far we've gone, and we're not going to be upset.
Yeah, that was the kind of thing. The kind of thing I was hearing as well is one of those, like, we got to grand finals. Obviously, like, they're gonna play their best, but wasn't necessarily thinking to just walk in and
Basically, they weren't going in with any sort of cocky attitude. They were just being as humble as possible and just kind of setting themselves up basically for the loss. But God, that first map, that comeback, that must have really channeled or got them just hyper.
Like, thinking back to when I watched it live, thinking back to it, I remember, because of like how Swift is as a team, like they're less disciplined, less like team oriented. I thought, like, for sure the second those 2 rounds happened so quickly, and I was basically like, not to take anything away from Ascent, it was like a bit of a huge throw from Swift. I thought like for sure that was just Swift done. I thought that was just Swift basically just tilted like to oblivion basically. Because when you go from that like commanding a lead to just over the course of just like a couple of minutes, just like losing all of that completely, I thought they were just going to be like, nah, right, done with this. Don't care about grand finals, just like whatever. I thought that was going to be Ascent like walking away with it completely.
Yeah, I guess it's just a tug of war basically. It was emotions were just being pulled from each side of the not just the entire match, but between the maps as well. It was very back and forth. There were times where you're thinking, "Oh, Swift have got this. Oh, no, they haven't. Okay, Ascent have got this. Whoop, no, they haven't." And
I think there's also the case sometimes that I don't think tilting is 100% of the time a bad thing for every player. I think there's some players that like say their team's losing and then they get frustrated with the losing and then they just change how they play and it makes them better almost.
Yeah.
I think that's probably true of some players on Swift. Like
I think it's kind of like what you see in CS where like some teams that play with a standard, they play a lot looser and just like a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more like taking kind of more risks and trusting like the fragging power. And that kind of thing on Swift is obviously going to make sense. Just getting that position where you're like caring slightly less and just going more for like the DM kind of plays. That it would make sense for like Swift's players to be better in that kind of situation.
And everyone talked throughout the season about Tiger being a real carry for Swift. I think he's probably the one player that would, the way it seems to me, he's the one that would try the hardest, the most consistently, at least in scrims and officials. And I think having funds in his place is like, I don't know, the only scout that can fill Tiger's role at the moment. I think if they had any other sub, it would have been a different affair over the 4 maps.
Yeah, I think like Funds is obviously like a really, really good scout, and it makes sense for him to fill the role of Tiger, another like very strong scout. But to me, I don't see Funds having that same kind of approach towards playing a scout as Tiger has. I think as much as like the way that Funds always like played in Low Panda, they always like, they always gave a lot of their scouts like a lot of the heals and they could like kind of charge forward or whatever. To me, Tiger's like even more so that just like running forward, taking every fight, like actually just dicking on people and making them look like idiots. I don't see Funds doing quite as much of that. To me, tends to be like slightly like more reserved. So I think he was like the best person to fill those shoes, but it still was a very different experience from if they had actually played with Tiger.
Yeah. I think it's maybe Tiger's reputation as being, when people think of Tiger, they think of Tiger's scout from last season where he was literally just dicking people. Like that was just his entire season was him doing whatever he wants, and people thought, oh, when he hit 7, like 7 are going to show him that he can't just do what he wants. And then he still did what he wants against the 7 game. And then people were like, well, Tiger's a brilliant scout. It's really scary because it almost felt like the Tiger show. And then this season, it kind of seems a little bit more scaled back. Like it doesn't really feel like it was a Tiger show anymore. It was more just, he was just another cog in the Swift machine. And I didn't really feel like his presence was super missed. And I think Funds was more than fine, really, to replace him on the scene. Obviously, it would have been better to have Tiger there because it's just obviously he's part of the team. He knows them a bit better. They probably have more set strats or whatnot, and he knows what's going on with his team and whatnot. But I think if people are thinking, oh, well, Tiger's not playing, that's a GG for Swift. It's not the Tiger from last season.
Plus like Swift had plenty of other star players. You have like between like Celentes and Ali alone, you have 2 other guys who can just turn up huge on any day of the week.
Yeah.
If they see fit, they can just like basically toggle on and just start pounding people.
That can't be ignored, especially like the amount of time that those guys have played together.
Yeah.
As Soldier and Demo, like even though that Ali just came in, like for the first time playing TF2 in a while since he left, I think 2 maps is enough time for them to click back into each other and kind of destroy.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how their performances were in the first 2 maps, but I mean, regardless, I'd be surprised if they weren't good.
I saw like From what I saw, I thought obviously like Ali being back playing with Swift like was a little bit surprising because it was sorted out like a bit last minute. To me, Ali was consistently good, but I didn't see him make the same kind of Ali like impact that you've seen before. Like he would have good impact, but he wouldn't have absolutely pounding on people consistently, if you know what I mean. Like there were way less times over the course of grand finals where I was like, oh my god, Ali's just absolutely pounding them. Then like we saw kind of previous. I think it was just like generally like a bit quieter than in other performances.
I think it was just a slow starter. I think because it was, I don't know, maybe the Reckoner map didn't go so well for him from what I can remember. Like it was not great for him. Process a little bit. Well, actually, probably more so, where it was not going great for LA. But around Snakewater and Gully Wash, especially Gully Wash as well, they turned it around really, really well. And I was a little terrified once. Like I felt like if they got to Gully Wash, then Swift were going to take it because Sil doesn't lose Gully Wash, you know.
No, that was like the second it went to Gully Wash, people were like, well, you know, Ascent had a good run, but yes, the Swift players would not lose Gully Wash.
I remember,
they would not lose it to this day.
Now that you say that, I remember watching that demo for the map 4 on Gully in particular, and Sil was in my chat, and like the whole demo that I was watching, it was just like, you know, bit of a
just saying, I don't lose Gully Wash,
and then Sil just does something fucking ridiculous, and then you know.
I think that
Swift are back into a good position.
That was the entire.
That was the course of the game.
That was the entire grand final. Really, was just Celentes just pulling something so far out of his arse and just bringing it back.
I don't know if we can say the entire. Wasn't it process? We had Celentes going 5 for 22 or something along those lines.
Well, yeah, that was,
I think we can't pick up his ego that much. You know, there was one map where he got pounded. I think it was process, something like that.
Fair.
Speaking of replacement players and big impact, gotta mention Thalash for Ascent. I think in terms of individual impact and in terms of like his suitability for the team, I think it was basically perfect because like I think the biggest thing that Ascent had, like they had like good team play, but I think things could kind of get to a situation for Ascent where they would start kind of losing control. They start getting like a bit ahead of themselves. Like Elacor, obviously, he's got like very strong DM and can get like quite aggressive. But I think like when things start to kind of slip a bit for Ascent, they kind of all go a bit along with it. And I think it was actually Ombrak who was saying about this. Like at the time, Thalash was a really good force for just like getting them to relax and slow down a second and take the time to go back to doing things methodically, not just kind of let the atmosphere of the team slip to like too high energy. And I think that is kind of exactly what Ascent needed. And obviously, in terms of, you know, Thalash's individual impact on Sniper, I think we saw some of the most bullshit walk-in, drop the medic players I've seen in many seasons. The fact that it happened twice in the grand finals alone was hilarious. It was
the one on Snake was particularly bad.
That was obscene. That was truly obscene. For anyone who didn't watch the grand finals, the scene is Babs is standing on like the little wooden like whatever wheel crate thing, whatever it is, right next to like the left-hand shutter from like the defender's point of view, standing there basically motionless, and Thalas walks all the way through the far right, way further than any human being should ever be able to get to, a solid like 10-15 meters into last, and then just headshots her without I don't think he took like even like a single point of damage shots or something. It was ridiculous. It was absolutely obscene.
I think even after that as well, they thought like, well, where's the safest place we could put her? And they put her behind the tank, that little like gas tank in near the left-hand spawn from the defender's perspective.
Yeah,
that was just literally a little tiny cubby where you could move past like this far.
They had some revolutionary medic positioning. Honestly, it was
the medic
the kind of
wasn't even in the game.
Seen.
Like at this point, it was like they haven't got any buffs. They just literally put the medic there, and as long as Babs is on the scoreboard,
we're fine. Don't worry about it. Is it no? It wasn't even twice. It was 3 times in the grand finals, because on Reckoner there was one as well where Thalas basically he dropped down from Toxic, saw Babs like basically just on the edge of like where the forklift is, narrowly misses a shot, and everyone's like, oh, unlucky, he missed a shot, what are you gonna do? Now they know where he was sniping from. She's not just gonna stand there again. I don't know. I think Swift maybe just didn't know where he sniped from. I think they just like maybe had no idea because she was standing in the exact same spot with her head just poking out from the exact same angle. So he just spawns on sniper again and then just does it the exact same thing, but hits the shot this time.
I feel bad. Like we're bullying Babs at this point, but I mean, Flash is like the sniper boogeyman. You know, he's gonna find you. And
right. To clarify, I don't like this. None of this is to say this is necessarily Babs' fault. The Reckoner one, you could argue is like partially because there is an angle from Toxic where you can be seen, and she was just like slightly peeking out. But Snake Water, no, okay? I refuse to blame Babs for Snake Water, and I refuse to blame Babs for Gully Wash. There is no way a man should be allowed to walk through river, basically walk another like 10 meters into your last, and then just dome your medic. No, that should not be allowed. That's illegal.
You have to wonder what they're doing.
Absolutely no idea. See, this is the kind of stuff where maybe if you don't scrim for like 4 weeks, you forget that occasionally someone has to look at river. You know, occasionally someone has to look at far right on the snake last. Otherwise, the man's just going to walk in and kill your medic.
It's a long series, you know. You got to do those hand stretches every now and then. You got to take your hands off the keyboard.
yeah, exactly. He's got to sit there just like halfway in the middle of a match, just be like, you know, I'm just gonna have to be able to just gonna get a drink. Don't worry, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. Like,
it was. I think the entire grand finals was kind of a story of medic drops. I would say. From both.
It was. I like Ombrak had his fair share, but not quite in spectacular ways as Babs.
Yeah, I mean, well, we can credit to Lash for some of those. I like that Ombrak had said in chat earlier that the map that they had taken off Swift in the upper bracket final was Gully.
Yeah.
And that was the fourth map of the series. I wasn't sure what the bans were when they did the map picks. But I'm surprised that they would have let Gully Wash through, considering that's the map they lost.
I'm just going to see if they posted it, actually. Nope, no, they have not. I hate it when they don't do that.
I think from the looks of it, it would be Ascent picked Reckoner, Swift picked Process, Ascent picked Snake, Swift picked Gully. Assuming, if they were played in the correct order, then yeah. It would be that Swift would have picked Gully Wash over Prolans.
Interesting.
No, unless that probably would have got banned. Whatever. Either way, I believe Swift did pick Gully Wash, so again, maybe they just believed in us.
It was Swift that picked the last map from the remaining 2 maps. So so it'll be Sen picked they picked Reckoner. I think it's because they had a good one against Low Panda on that map. So that's why they picked that map. Swift picked Swift picked
Well, they won it in the end.
Oh yeah, anyway.
That's the important part.
Either way, yeah. It was in terms of grand finals, I don't think you could have asked for much more. I think there's definitely
it was
after Process, there was definitely I think a bit of a line where the first 2 maps I thought were actually brilliant. Like there was a lot of back and forth and I felt great for my boys Ascent. Like there was some pretty nuts play going on. I feel Snakewater and Gully were a little bit more kind of devolving into chaos. Some of it, when you were watching, you were just like, good God, everyone's just running each other and hoping for the best. I think it's just properly just went crazy. Yeah, it just went crazy at one point. Maybe the idea was like Swift was like, right, these guys play as a team. They they like to be methodical. What if we just try and make stuff happen constantly? What if we make it as messy as physically possible and just trust in our DM? That's logic.
I think it was just more maybe the mids were going a bit better for Swift in these Snakewater and Gully Wash maps, especially Gully Wash. I think Gully Wash was they were in full control almost, those mids. And Snakewater was just towards the end kind of roughing out to Swift's way. But Reckoner and Process obviously was more just these kind of clutch things from Ascent, bringing it back. Maybe not so Process. Process was like it was kind of like a little bit of taster of everything. One team was being dominant on one map each, and one team was kind of pulling out things out of their arse on other maps. And
it was...
the fact that Ascent got it, their maps, the first 2 maps immediately, everyone was just on the edge of the seat because they were like, oh my God, am I going to see the Cinderella story happen?
Yeah, it was so close as well.
Everyone was just waiting for this ending for a good hour. It was like, any minute now, Ascent are going to close it out.
It was so close. Like, there was definitely there's a world where Ascent won that grand final in 3 maps completely. Like, they snake water, like I said, it was 3-2 to Swift, but from memory, Ascent had like more than their fair share of chances to like lock down a good like 2-round advantage or so. And I genuinely thought it was going to be like 3 maps to none, like an absolute just pounding of a grand final, but didn't quite happen.
Thank God for that default map.
Yeah, it's got to feel bad for Ascent though, you know, because
if it went to one more map, it would have been different. Nuze.
Possibly, it would depend on the map.
Use your Nuze brain. Tell me, would it have been a different story if it was another map? Sunshine.
If it was Sunshine, then yeah, I think Ascent would have won.
I mean, what's the map that they didn't want to play? They didn't want to play Badlands, did they? Nobody wants to play Badlands. That map is bad.
Pretty sure Ombrak said that Sunshine is their map, so I think that's probably why.
So you're saying Swift got lucky and that was it, you know? If it was a fair best of 5, you know, Ascent would have walked away with it. Anyway,
I think we should move on from ETF.
Yeah, probably.
Talking about it for long enough.
So just to round that off, obviously, Swift did win 2 maps to 2, but with the upper bracket maps. So congratulations to Swift for winning the ESCA, not ESCA. Whoa, ETF12 season 28. And now we're going to move to a different Swift playing in the ESCA Grand Finals. So Swift versus Ferrotech. Now this we'll set the scene again. Obviously, most people were expecting Ascent Froyo Grand Finals as we've had like more seasons than I care to remember. That didn't really happen. If I remember, in Ascent got knocked out of the lower brackets in a reasonably, I think it was like the first maps of the best of 3 was like reasonably close, but then didn't they get like the stomped on the 3rd map or something absolutely crazy? I'm not 100% sure, but obviously Ascent have had their own fair share of weird roster things happening, and the end result is they didn't make it to grand finals, and we had Swift NA get through to try and take down Froyo. Froyo, same kind of situation. In ESCA, it's a double elimination format, but the upper bracket winners get a full best of 3 advantage. So in order to win the grand finals, Swift would have had to have won 2 best of 3s, likely consecutively, and Froyo had to win 1 best of 3. So quite a significant advantage. And the fact that Froyo is Froyo, Swift were about as much of an underdog as you could possibly imagine, really.
I don't know what they were thinking
when
they had the second best of 3. It just seems such an impossible climb for any team that's coming from the lower bracket.
It's crazy,
anyway.
But it's not. It's been done before.
I know
it has been done
before, and it probably didn't make for the hypest match ever. But god damn, it was so long. Like, how many maps? And an ESA game could last for like an hour. So
yeah, well, exactly. Like,
6 maps, a potential 6 hours in one game. That's just like nuts.
Absolutely obscene. But right, so what we did have is first map of the grand finals, which is the only real map we're gonna dwell on for too long, probably, was Process. I don't know about you guys when you watch it. When I was watching it, the first, more or less the first 10 minutes of Process was very kind of like stalemate-y, back and forth. Everything looked very equal. I would say like the entire first half of Process looked very equal, and I thought looked quite good for Swift, because as much as there was a lot of like back and forth, more often than not, it was Swift like attacking Froyo last, from what I can remember. It was Swift being in a bit more like controlling of a position, and I thought I was very impressed with the first half. The fact that it didn't look like Swift were the underdogs at all. It looked, a lot of it was quite equal. Ignoring the mids, the mids went Froyo's way almost exclusively.
Yeah,
but not the start,
I thought Swift, considering they won very few mids, did a very respectable job to get the rounds they did in the first half.
But they opened very strong with the mids. I remember they won the first mid very convincingly as well. I don't know, it just seemed like they were in control from the start, because there was like some slight copy plays coming out from Froyo. Like they were, I know they've been doing this all season, but they're doing like this Kritzkrieg start, and sometimes that sets the first round to just like, oh, it's time for the clown round, and everyone's just kind of faffing about, trying to pick up and figure out how to kind of mesh and make these crits plays work, and just reset things back. And Shade was
There's one moment on stream just now that was brilliant on the Gully game where Shade's in drop down and Garbuglio walks up to him with 2 rockets, and I think he might have been out of ammo. and then he can't kill him and gets panned.
We'll get to that clown first.
Yeah, we'll talk about process a bit more, and then we'll get onto whatever the hell Gully Wash was. I said, I think like first half of process, like to me, from my point of view, like Swift looked strong. They looked more commanding than not. And I thought after the first half, it was like not out of the realms of imagination that Swift would be able to take that first map. And it kind of gave me a little bit of faith, considering I said I haven't watched ESEA like religiously. And obviously Froyo have more recognizable players to everyday folk than Swift do. But I thought, considering everything, considering the fact that Froyo had like a perfect season and Swift like far from, I thought after the first half things were definitely, it was gonna make for like an interesting grand finals. And then the second half happened, and to me that was where it started going a bit less well, honestly.
I thought it was more of a story of just Froyo were kind of just being a little bit cocky at the start. I just seemed like, obviously, the Kritzkrieg start, there was some dry pushes, some very ambitious dry pushes.
Yeah,
there was, definitely. They were just
going absolutely no major advantages. It felt like they wanted to get the game finished quickly.
Yeah.
And Habib was struggling for the majority of the game as well. Delpo was doing great and really kind of outshined him in the first half. But it was very slow, I guess, for an ESA game. I can remember there was a moment that made me laugh where Marxus was just kind of, I think there was a sniper duel that just happened between mid and second, and the sniper just picked off the other sniper. A whole 5 seconds had passed, and Marxus like, they're going as slow as humanly possible. They're not pushing it. I'm like, Jesus, Marxus, like,
whoa, people are families.
Euro is like that's like every day, but apparently if they're not pushing in 5 seconds, like they're doing it wrong over in America. So, but it was very back and forth. It was never like Euro slow, where it's like gone to a standstill. And there was a lot of just a good hefty attempts from both teams, but it just looked like Froyo was trying to do it quite lazily, really. And maybe towards the second half of the game, they kind of went like, all right, we'll snap out of it. Banny tried a few different things, I noticed, and it really, like, these little changes from him kind of brought around these rounds out of them. And that was another little story about process as well. They were struggling to kind of finish that last point against Froyo.
Yeah,
pushed them back so many times, at least like 4 or 5 times.
Do it. One thing I wanted to mention, which maybe it's just like a playstyle thing, maybe they were never really in a position to do it, but I was quite surprised that there was a decent amount of last holds for both teams where it was equal Ubers, and Froyo would almost always, from what I saw, be doing like the standard forward hold, equal Ubers on last with like a gun in front of lobby, your medic playing towards there, and like the setup that the kind of thing we see from Seven and a lot of teams are adopting now. The idea is like you're denying rollout, you're denying one, you're denying a lot of space in lobby. You're not just standing on the back right, like giving them too much space in lobby to kind of peek and prod and go for sacks, whatever. But I didn't really see Swift do that. I don't think I noted Swift doing that actually ever.
Oh, no, they just did. Did they? Oh, yeah, they definitely did. There was times where they were kind of doing the whole sentry gun thing. I can remember there was clear moments where they were heavily prioritizing the life of the sentry gun. Like they would do, there was a nice little fun play, I thought, where Marmaduke is like standing in front of the spam and just like periodically like taking a bit of damage, backing off a little bit, making sure his sentry gun and his engineer not taking too much damage. But they were definitely holding it somewhat well. But then there was just silly mistakes from both teams, really. Like somebody... Eric would just come in on the flank and just get like 2 random kills, and but it was the same for Froyo as well. There were some rounds that they lost, and they shouldn't, and these mistakes that shouldn't have happened in any sort of Froyo state. Where Banny was, oh my god, there was a point where on last point he was running around carrying a sentry gun from like door. And then he knows there's a sticky trap, but he's like trying to sneak past it. Like maybe he thinks, oh, damn, I'm not going to be looking at this. Imagine how kecky it would be having a sentry gun on that spire. So he tries to make it, he dies, they get another pick, and then they just push in, they go around, and everyone's like, oh, Swift are making the comeback, they're going to win.
Swift are insane, and it's like, well, let's be real, no idea what Froyo's doing.
There's also the infamous trap, as Froyo were pushing last.
Oh yeah, they tried to push like lobby right, wasn't it?
Yeah. And on Shade's POV, you can see the stickies before he goes through the door. and then he kind of like walks in the door as if he was going to stand in the door frame but not walk in, and then he drops to the stickies. I don't think any of his heal targets saw them, but there must have been a miscommunication there where he didn't want to pop as he came through because there were stickies that he wanted cleared or something like that. But that was a car crash of a push.
Speaking of car crashes, let's go to Gully. Let's go to Gully, which is just a map for the ages in terms of pure chaos. It was, what was it? Both teams were running crits at least to begin with. There was a lot of crits happening. Very few actual good critters, which I was amazed by. I think there was one decent one, like little kind of 3 kills from Ali. There was some good sticky snipes, but none of like, you know, no big like 4 or 5Ks from what I saw.
From Ali.
It was not Ali. Sorry.
That kid's so good he can take over games in an A.
Yeah, you know, he's pretty good. But yeah, like I don't know. I think maybe Furry were just so confident in Gully that they were just like, we could do more or less whatever we want.
Well, pretty much, Gully Wash was Process was the map that I think Furry Tech picked. So that was the map that everyone expected them to win on. So when things got so close, I know it was 5-2, but that game was a lot closer than the score suggests.
Yeah.
Really. But because that was so close, people were like, well, Swift have got this. They've got Gully Wash. Gully Wash is supposedly their best map. Everyone was agreeing. All the analysts, casters, all that were saying that they should be taking this map. And then as soon as it started, it was a massacre. They just couldn't figure out a mid. And they were just rolling it. Froyo were just crawling all over them. It was just... Gog Buglio just couldn't find those like signature mids where he's getting these massive flanks and like almost 4 or 5 kills on the mid. He just couldn't make it happen. I think it was like the sole focus of these Furrier mids. Habib like came in huge for that map as well. He was struggling so much on Process, and on Gully Wash he pounded. He was literally my MVP for that map.
One big difference I noticed between the two teams when they were running crits, like I was looking a lot between Habib and Delpo's povs. As those crits were happening, and it wasn't necessarily that it looked much harder for Delpo, like as in, you know, the space he was given and what his team was doing to help, but it looked like Froyo just were a lot more prepared. They were paying more attention to when the crits would be in play. They were playing Shade in passive positions. They had a pyro. There was one point where Delpo had like 4 stickies from River, and he was shooting them towards Shade, but there was a gun and a pyro. And Arik just reflected every sticky, and he couldn't do anything.
Got absolutely nothing.
And they just let him walk in the choke and shoot as many sticks as he wanted because they knew they could deal with it. And then, you know, in a lot of those situations, like it seemed like Swift weren't really getting anything for their charges.
It just felt like maybe after the first 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, maybe like that's how long the first half was. Like they just got kind of lazy, I thought, over on Swift. There was points where there was obvious crits coming in from Habib or something like that. There's going to be a door. There's only 2 doors really to look at over on Gully Wash mid. And there's going to be a crits coming in from this one way. But he manages to poke his head out for a good 2 seconds and gets a long-distance surgical sticky onto 404. And he ends up dropping. And it just seems like they're not trying anymore. There was a very clear point where they're like, well, this is what's happening. Froyo going to win, and they just started going to Clown Town. They just started typing in all chat. They just went.
Yeah, I think it's like in fairness to them, you know, if you lose first map, you're then 3-0 down on the second map. Nothing you're doing is really working, and you're like, right, so either we more or less just let this happen, or we find a way to come back with this map and then win 3 more maps, possibly being 3 full hours without dropping a single one. I believe they may have just been like kind of happy to settle for second. not to say, you know, from the start, but I think maybe after the first map and then after the first couple of rounds of Gully, they were just like,
you're like,
I don't see it happening.
I've got to go to school tomorrow. Okay, we need to just
so this ain't going on until 5
a.m. They play late in NA as well.
They go like till 12 a.m., don't they? And here we're like old men in EU. We want to go be in bed bath by 10 o'clock.
Except if you're the Russians, where you're playing on 2 or 3 hours ahead.
That's just the old Russian time zones, isn't it? Where they have to kind of just man up and deal with it. But
all of us Brits have early nights.
Exactly. But yeah, I don't know what more there is to say about ESEA Grand Finals. Honestly, I think it was what it was. Froyo, you know, congratulations. 2 maps to 0, winning grand finals, another season under their belt. What is this, 980th or something in a row? Something like that.
Something like that.
You know, come on, like, not to be rude to America, but I'm sure between you guys, you've got some boys you can like throw together to be able to actually take down Froyo once and for all.
You know,
they've got the players.
I think if Ascent actually made the grand finals, they would have made a more of a show of it.
I blame Paddy.
Yeah.
Poor Paddy. He's not the reason. I don't think he's.
Right. Anyway, that's more or less ESA grand finals all wrapped up. We're now going to go to our little section of announcements, few interesting things, few little things probably worth discussing. First thing we'll go on to is some changes being made to the Essentials monthlies. The next one will be, I've been told, the first couple weeks of January. So, you know, you get Christmas, you get New Year, but then you got to be scribbing together. Otherwise, you know, you'll have no chance of getting a share of this money. There will be some significant rule changes being made to monthlies going forward and all Essentials events going forward. First things first, they will be adopting the rule set we saw at Rewind, which is first to 5 rounds. See, this is for 5CP. It'll be first to 5 rounds or 30 minutes. So that kind of middle ground between like the NA and EU rule set. I'm sure for a lot of games, it may not make a huge difference. But if it gets to a position where you're 4-4, whoever gets that next round will end up winning it regardless of the time.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I said like it worked fine enough for Rewind, and obviously it's very practical to organize around.
I can remember me and Sideshow, I think, ages ago, this was absolutely ages ago, where people were talking about this. It always comes up in a point of discussion when it comes to talking about EU rules versus NA rules, and there's not been many games in ETF12 history, like throughout all divs, keep in mind, where somebody has got the 5th round over against somebody else, and then somebody has come back from that to win, like say 6-5, for example, or 7-5, or something like that. Basically, just if it did have that sort of little advantage, because just the 30-minute timer wouldn't allow it.
It's been a long time since ETF2L games or any TF2 games were that high scoring. It's been way too long.
Yeah. It's happened in 2 ETF2L games, I think, from what I can remember. From like the raw data of just checking all these games, like, and using all the filters on ETF2L to find out which games.
Just parsing logs with your mind.
Exactly.
I think there was some old tool or something you could use on ETF2L to actually find out these ridiculous score lines from the match pages.
So the 2 offense class limit.
This is the bit I was going to get onto next. So
double pyros come in?
Yeah, right. So this is something which I clarified with Wolf. I made want us to go 100% clear. The class limits will be changed to 2 offensive, 2 allowed of any offensive classes, 1 support, 1 defense. So double spy will no longer be a thing, but double pyro will be legal. I said I clarified this 100% considering the current state of pyro, but that will be a thing which is allowed for Essentials tournaments going forward unless any, huge major things get decided. I think that's significant because double pyro on last like gully, like, you don't have time for a gun or something. Mm-hmm. It's significant, like more than just like maybe having 2 pyros alive at the same time, with the rules being as they are, where if someone's pyro and then they die, you can't really spawn as pyro currently. Now you can. So if your pyro dies and like another scout just spawns, you don't have to wait until they respawn on a different class. You can just be like right back out in pyro. Like, at least from what I played, that actually happens like quite consistently. The ability to just like basically rotate quite quickly your pyros on a last hold. I think it's significant. Like, I think there's a lot of lasts where the ability to have 2 pyros at any one time is going to be really, really good. Like, just those post Uber kind of fights, they can be so good.
I think the big question mark on it is how much double pyro has been affected by the pyro update, because the only class limit of 2 since I don't know, for the last few seasons now has been, besides Soldier and Scout, has been Spy. But the last season that it was different, it was double Spy and double Pyro and nothing else. So there has been a time where this class limit was in place. I think it was only for 1 season. But like I'm saying, the big difference between then and now will be the pyro update, because I don't know, I feel like there's a lot more potential for experimentation with new pyro.
I said, I think any kind of like post-Uber fights, like if you can get a pyro, especially like, you know, someone just spawns as pyro with like crit heals, like alone, one pyro can just like shred through people in post-Uber fights, like when you're defending last. And I think, you know, having 2, maybe even more, just insane.
Yeah, actually, you could see some of it from the ESA Grand Final itself. There were some points on Gully Wash where they were playing the point on Froyo, and they would actually run a pyro. I'm not sure at this point if they weren't taking the game seriously or not, but looking at it, serious or clowny, it was really effective. They just rushed a pyro on point, and he would clean up anyone that was playing the point immediately, and we'd always auto win like a 1v1. It was never really up to contention or whether or not a scout can just kind of pull it out of the bag and kind of get the point play off the back of that. But the thing I'm worried about is what Nuze mentioned earlier, is just like the double pyro and the fact that there's some mechanics with the pyro update, and if you refresh some of the flames and whatnot, it makes for greater damage or something.
Because pyro flames do quite a lot of damage right now.
Yeah,
it is very significant.
Like, you can quite easily win 1v1s against similarly skilled players on Soldier and Scout if you play the fights right.
There are some mechanics though where if someone's already on fire and they get like an additional flare or something like that, like the damage is increased or the afterburn is increased for longer, and all these other little things. If you've got 2 pyros making that happen, maybe it would just play off that sort of gameplay.
Either way, we're gonna find out before too long, so fair warning for that one.
The other thing is, sorry, but at the moment, all 3 of the major new pyro unlocks are still banned in the whitelist. So the Jetpack, the Gas Passer, and the Dragon's Fury. But I wouldn't be surprised if we were to see changes to them to attempt to make them more viable, or, you know, not ban-worthy.
Yeah.
And then I think you might see, like, I think the Gas Passer could be used well. Like, if there was 2 pyros on the last defense. I mean, it could even, like, make it viable to have pyro when you have even Ubers in the stalemate. So pyro could take a trade and do some damage, and then have the area denial for the repush, because he has the gas cloud. That kind of stuff. I think there's a bit more potential there than people think about. But I mean, that's if the weapons get rebalanced.
Depends how versatile it is and how easy it is to kind of use in all these scenarios, really, instead of just like the stray little one-offs that you can think up in your head. And I know, it kind of reminds, like, there are times in the past where people were kind of thinking, oh, this is quite legit on just that old pyro. Like, I remember, God, this was ages ago, but when Timer used to play, and his entire team would go down, and as a medic, he would just switch off the pyro, and he knows, like, maybe I can make a massive clutch reflect, or just like pyro play and just keep people knocked off the point, or at least just cause some chaos. And it worked a little bit for a little bit. That was like a Taimu specialty. But I can see now just people pulling it out in these very, very moments where they need super clutch, like even better than those sorts of double soldier bombs from like Snakewater, where you kind of feel like, oh, they've got the point play. Oh, here's a double soldier bomb that's come in. And now you can just kind of make that sort of turnaround with just maybe 1 pyro, perhaps.
Yeah. The next thing to go on to in regards to changes for monthlies is that for the foreseeable, Viaduct is going to be removed. It's going to be exclusively 5 CP. The idea behind this is being it's going to be, I don't know, like 1 format instead of like 1 format the vast majority of the time, and then occasionally Viaduct is like the only Koth map. This isn't set in stone by any means. It's going to be how it's going to run for the foreseeable, but it's this kind of like debate a lot of people have been having, in that having only 1 Koth map being played is kind of weird. If there was more than 1, it would be fine, because you'd have like, you wouldn't just have like game mode being played on 1 map and 5 speed the rest of the time. Like, it's very open if there could be a Koth map around which is worthy of being in the map pool, but For the foreseeable, for Essentials monthlies, Viaduct won't be included. It'll be exclusively the 5CP maps we know and sometimes love.
I think there's like I don't know why there's this cycle of like people not enjoying new maps, and it kind of gets worsened when you take Koth into the equation, because people are like pretty resistant to change with 5CP maps. Like, especially when it comes to playing new maps or testing them and giving good feedback. Like, it's quite a gradual process for map makers in TF2. And when you've got the 6v6 community that's already quite resistant to change, and the only Koth map that they've accepted is Viaduct, and a lot of people don't like playing that in anything but like proper teams. Yeah. So it's not a good map to play with pugs or demixes, because Koth tends to get messier. And when you have that, when you factor that into the equation, the only place for map makers to get good constructive Koth feedback would be in tournaments where proper teams are playing each other. And I think at that point, people are quite content to, use the excuse of, oh, it's a new map, it's shit, I don't know it, to cover their losses. So I think it would probably be really hard for any map makers trying to make a 6v6 Koth map, because I can imagine them struggling to get good feedback from anywhere.
I think Koth Viaduct is just the exception to the rule by the fact that it's around so much in the regular ETF 12 seasons that people just play it on pugs and on these casual things, because they know they've been acquainted to it for so long now that it doesn't seem so bad swallowing that Koth pill. But I remember when they were introducing these sort of Koth maps a while back, and when they first came out and whatnot, people obviously wanted to experiment with the game mode when it first popped out, but it's just so demanding from a team where you feel like, okay, we need to change the entire way we play. We need to figure out how to play this game mode, and only tailored for this. It's almost like you're putting in an extra 50% of the effort of practice time just to learn like 1/7 of the entire map pool for the season. Like, as a leader or a team captain, you're thinking, well, that's not worth it. It's better if we just tank being bad at that map or banning that map or something like that, and focusing on your 5CP than going under Koth. I mean, it would be nice if we got more Koth maps, because then it would make that reason obsolete, because people are like, well, Koth is a big part of it now. If it was like good 50-50, then it would justify that.
We will get to something close to that in a little bit, in a couple minutes.
Well, the thing that the thing that irks me when you consider how teams approach Viaduct and Koth maps in general, Koth is a lot simpler than 5CP. There's a lot less stuff that can happen. Like, you don't really run half the off classes on Koth. There's only one point. The spawn waves are only one of two things. Like, there's so many things that play out in a much more controlled manner on Koth, and Viaduct especially. And I feel like it's more worth the time, almost. Like, because if you can put a bit of time practicing in Viaduct and getting good at that, it's a map in your pool that you have that's in all likelihood going to be better than everyone else you play against, because people don't put the time into it. And I mean, that's what Froyo did. Like, Froyo were known for how dominant they were on Viaduct, and like that was an insta-ban for a lot of teams playing against them. And the teams that didn't insta-ban it, as the lands go, they lost it, because it's Froyo on Viaduct.
I mean, I completely understand from like a very high level perspective, but it's mainly I'm just thinking of like back when I was like a shitter, and I had my own shitty team, and I had to think like, man, we can only be shitty for like so many hours in the week. We need to like focus our shit. So we thought it's better to focus our shit on 5CP. I understand if you're a very top level team, you need to pour a lot of hard work into any of these maps, no matter what game mode or what silly little thing is going on. And it is a real shame, because it is a nice little unique twist. It's nice to just have something refreshing brought into the map pool and into all these ETF 12 weeks and whatnot, and just it's a nice little difference maker between all the slog of 5CP constantly. There's pros and cons for both of this.
Yeah.
And I can understand where Essentials are coming from just sticking with 5CP as well, especially on their premise of like it's easier to explain, it's easy to just follow as a casual viewer as well. I mean, if I had to explain to my old 6v6 team a while ago how to play King of the Hill, if I had to tell my mum how to follow King of the Hill as well, I think I'm going to kill myself.
Well, what we'll go on to for the next bit is I was going to say a little bit later, but we might as well bring it up now since we've talked about it so much. Speaking of new maps, including new Koth maps, not exclusive to 5CP, your boy Beta he has a competition happening right now for map makers. So people who are looking to make new maps or have new maps, which I think the rules are they haven't been played in any competitive season so far. So they're new to the eyes of the vast majority of competitive players. You have a deadline of March 1st, and basically it's just the opportunity for people to actually submit some new maps, have some good testing. I think talking to Beta, there was a plan for getting, if nothing, like bare minimum, some of like the double mixes for high and prem level players to actually test out these maps and give them a good kind of run through anything kind of created long before the deadline. Give them a good run through and just try and get as much feedback as physically possible, and have the same kind of thing. Like the last map I remember kind of being subject to quite quick change was probably Logjam. There was a period of time where Logjam was just being constantly updated based on feedback. Some changes were good, some changes were bad, but there was constant feedback, constant changes being made. And I think the idea is this will more or less be an opportunity to get some people together to do that, and to hopefully try and create some new maps to freshen up the map pool. Like I said, like Koth is definitely included. If you want to make a Koth map, you go for it. There is €70 in a Swift hoodie on the line for first place, €15 for second and third. So you can make a bit of money from it, a little bit of pocket money, help you recover some of those Christmas debts. Probably, well worth doing. There will be. I will throw a link to the TFTV thread in chat for anyone who is interested. But basically, if you've been thinking for ages, I want to create a map, but I'm some random open/mid player. I want people who are actually going to give like the map a fair try, give me some feedback. This is probably the best opportunity you're going to have. So if you're interested, basically start chatting to people. Worst comes to worst, so that there are going to be, I believe, there's going to be some map testing streamed on Essentials at some point. So might get a bit of publicity through that as well. Who knows? Basically, what I'm saying is it's out there.
I just want to remind some potential map makers as well. You don't have to make this thing like super beautiful.
No, definitely.
I think the aspect of these competitive players is like they don't really care too much about the window dressing of a map too much, as long as it plays well and like the areas were just nicely designed. Like I know people that are still playing CP Orange for Christ's sake, and that map is not.
Exactly.
It's just devoid of anything, and that's why they like it so much. So I would just keep it as simple as possible, and then try and see if you can just win on that gameplay alone, because that's what we're looking for, like the gameplay. It's not whether or not it has a banana tree.
Yeah, do not get bogged down with the detailing, because then that's a pain in the ass. If you spend 10 hours detailing your map and then suddenly you've got to change how mid works, that's all just wasted time.
Mm-hmm.
That can all happen right at the end. It's all about the gameplay to begin with.
I don't know about you guys, but I really enjoy playing new maps. Like, I think more so than I enjoy playing the standard maps. I don't know why. It just like the way people that are very used to TF2 approach new maps, I feel like it almost like gets rid of bad habits, because like when you don't know where you are on a map, you have to think about what you do.
Yeah. You don't just kind of like go on autopilot. Yeah. Everything's like a conscious kind of decision.
Like that. Because we've been playing CP Stitched quite a bit. Jimbot or Fia, his new map, in various demixes, and it seems to be the case with a map that plays well, or seems to play well with 5CP in 6v6. It seems like a really refreshing experience whenever I play. Is that like there's not as much. I don't know. It's just refreshing.
Yeah, it's very rewarding to actually find something new or some new little trick that you found out as well. Like remember when people were doing this with Gully Wash, and they would find like a really fast new rollout they could do.
You remember this for Gully Wash? Jesus.
Oh my God. Jesus, Turbo, please.
I don't mean to kind of beat you with the old man stick too much, but there was just this one video that I have still on my favorites where I was like, oh my God, he found this really quick rollout for Demo Man. to from Big Door. This is amazing. I want to do this jump and stuff like that. You don't really get that same discovery anymore because everyone's they know these maps like the back of their hand. Everybody does. It's like a crash course to TF2. It's like, well, you want to play competitive, huh? Well, you better memorize these maps and all these details and every single pixel on that thing.
We've had some intuitions of that, like with rollouts on Reckoner, because Ali started doing some weird pogo thing. But besides that, I don't think that's happened in a map for a long time.
Yeah, like I said, again, I would say
not to the level it used to.
You remember when the Cadus rollout came out for Process? People were like, "Oh my god, a new rollout in TF2!" It was just, I miss those little discoveries where people just find some of the most random things, and it is truly really satisfying as well when you're at that top level. If you're just a random scrub and you get to be known as the guy who finds that little spot, or if you get named after the spot as well. All these players
you become famous.
Yeah, I mean, it's forever. Especially if they're fun to do. Like, who hasn't played Roamer on Process and gone for the fast rollout? Like, regardless of whether it's a good idea, it's just fun to do.
You boys know what I'm talking about when you talk about the Sonic spot on Badlands in Choke. There's that little bush where you hide as a devil.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's the Sonic spot, man, where he has a little sticky trap hidden in the staircase, and he turns his back as Demo Man. You can't see him because he's just a grey little blob. And then, bam, he turns around and blows up the stickies.
And his name's engraved in history now. That's it.
Yeah. Same with, there's loads of names like that. There's like Haunter.
Yeah.
What are they? Yeah. There are ones.
It's there's a part of Reckoner named after Stark, actually. It's
the alley jump. Alley bar jump.
Well, I always heard it as like the DreamHack bomb was how people talked about it. Yeah.
Everyone would talk about it. It's like 50% of the time it works every time.
Yeah, exactly.
Raymond once told me that the only reason it worked every time was because he was the one that told Ali when to do it when he did it on 7. And then since Ali's been playing without Raymond, he's never been nearly as successful with it.
It was more the fact that Raymond. You know, when you saw teams that could obviously tell that the jump was coming, and then there was a few jumps where it still worked and it got clipped.
Those were always the best jumps. Where they're just like, right, yeah, we know what's going to happen. We're ready. Oh, no.
Entry gun and all this stuff, aiming at that spot, and he still gets like a crazy air pipe. And people
I think my favourite one is the one he had on Raptor in the last season of ETF12 that 7 played.
Is that the one with the air pipe?
Yeah.
Sideshow tested that. We got Sideshow.
I think it was actually.
And he obviously broke the octave of where voice could go and really solidified that a little bit in history. But yeah, see, these are just great moments. Like, imagine all these new little things you can find out about these new maps as well. And you know, it's not discouraging. You've got these maps that are currently played right now haven't been around forever. Reckoner, you know, Process,
Sunshine's
Goody Wash for me. It sounds like. I remember we used to play CP well. Okay, you know, there's.
Oh my lord!
Please.
All right, calm down. No. Right. Anyway, that's the map thing. It's going to be happening. So, there is a thread if you want to get more information, or I'm sure it'll direct you to various different people to talk to. Worst comes to worst, you could probably just go to the Essentials Discord to get some kind of information, or just, you know, talk to your boy Peter at some point. Apart from that, other announcements we have. I've been told not to tell people not to worry too much because inevitably you're going to forget 90% of what's said here. So there will be a big article rounding up what's going to be happening with Essentials in the first part of next year. So that's going to happen. Obviously, got to mention that ETFL season's over, grand finals is done, yada yada. So the award polls are now open. I think they only got opened maybe like 24 hours ago. So, you know, if you want to vote for who was the best, you know, off-classer, demo, medic, caster, you know, could be anyone. It could be Beta, it could be Ombrak, it could be Hipfire, it could be anyone, couldn't it? Could be anyone.
You're kind of missing somebody off that list, boy.
It could be Nuze. Did you do any casting?
I didn't cast once this season, actually.
It could be anyone. It could even be. I did. It could even be the old man of TF2, the backbone of TFTV,
Twiggy,
the man, the myth, the legend, TurboTabs himself.
Twiggy's actually been with TFTV longer than me, so technically he's a man.
Well, okay, right.
Why isn't there a writer of the season award?
Where were you, Blues? You didn't write for the last couple of. Well, actually, no, you did write for the very last one, but there were parts where
There were a couple I missed. Yeah, I was not active as a TFTV member this season, but that all changes. You know, I've got my flat now. I'll get back on my caster. I'm gonna get that caster of the season next time.
Season 29 news caster season, right?
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's it. Awards are open, so anything, anyone you want to vote for, show your love, do that. The awards, once they're all finished, the actual award show is probably going to be done on Pirate Radio sometime between Christmas and New Year, most likely. There will be some information about that at some point. Next point is that Essentials have told me to tell the world that they're very open to getting opinion pieces. New people who maybe haven't written about things much before, kind of interesting, well-written opinion pieces. If you have an interest in doing that, if maybe you're like new and kind of, you know, you've got some good ideas for the kind of thing you want to write, but maybe your writing isn't super kind of refined, you want to kind of run it by a few people and have somewhere for it to be published. Essentials has interest in getting people to do that. So if you want to do that, you know, you can be as unknown as you want. Go to the Essentials Discord, talk to people, and they will at least give you the information you need to get started. I think definitely, you know, more like little opinion pieces, more kind of little bits of a color to the scene is always good.
Yeah, gets you onto that ladder. I remember Gentleman John started off as just like a humble little writer that submitted something on BTB one day. TF2. So he just did
exactly. It gets you involved.
And that guy has helped us so much with stuff as well. It's just very nice, very nice. I want to welcome all opinion pieces.
Yeah. Next point is that the Backcap series is going to be coming to the Essentials YouTube. They're going to be working with Shunik, and more or less they're going to be moving the whole thing to the Essentials YouTube. So if you watch Backcap, that's going to be moving to the Essentials YouTube. That's more or less all there is to say about that. There is hopefully a series coming up at some point in the new year with interviews of top Prem players. Now, the idea, from what I've been told, I said it's still somewhat in the planning stage, but the idea is to have, if anyone's ever watched like big Counter-Strike events, those player profiles, those kind of, you know, like few-minute player profiles, very high production quality type things, that's the current plan. It should be like, you know, the people that got involved definitely like have the expertise to do like a really, really good job. So more or less keep an eye and an ear out for that. That should be happening in the new year. Obviously, there'll be more info like as it gets into like later stages. But that's definitely on the cards. It is definitely being planned for your boys at Essentials. Also, actually, to go back to monthlies slightly, it is fully within the plan of Essentials to have medals for monthlies, including participant medals. And I've been told that apparently they plan to have participant medals for each monthly tournament, not each season of monthly tournaments. Because, as I'm sure everyone remembers, Essentials has a season which is like several monthly tournaments, and then there's like a season winner. Basically, if you want to get free medals to make people on pubs think you're really good at the game, you can play in Essentials monthlies.
Not to make them think you're good at the game, to make them know.
No, to make them know, exactly. To make them know you're a true god of the game. There's also the intention, Essentials is planning on having guest streamers streaming on the Essentials channel. It'll like Wednesday is going to kind of be their guest streamer day, bit of cross promotion, sharing the love, sharing the audience, all that kind of thing. So they're obviously going to reach out to people they already know. But if there are people who are interested in sharing their audience and, you know, like I said, a bit of cross promotion, Essentials are open to people having a chat with them over Discord. Same kind of thing as with the rest of it. And our last little announcement is that Essentials are planning every couple months or so, or maybe every month, depending on how things happen. They want to create like some like fun kind of special events. Like the next one is going to be like there's going to be a YouTuber Highlander show match late in January 27th, apparently. It's their intention to kind of, you know, usually we see these kind of things done on sometimes like charity events or this, that, whatever. They're planning on trying to create some, you know, fairly regular fun kind of events for people to get interested in. Yeah, more or less, you know. Spread some more love. Spread some more different events. Bring some variety to your TF2 content viewing. Who knows? If you're into that, then also pay attention. That is my list, by the way. They gave me
Did you mention
quite
the service?
a list. Oh, that's actually a good point. Again, right, still in the testing stage, but they are looking at creating and using 132 tick servers, which is double the default tick rate for Essentials monthlies. Like I said, still in the testing phase, but it's what they are attempting to do.
Because at one point, people had made 128 tick DM servers for TF2, I think. Very briefly. I'm not sure I've ever played on them, but I remember it being a thing. And I don't know how much of a difference that made, but I'd be curious to see if these 132 tick, if they're done properly.
I'm going to monitor it, but in the past it has been delved into and has not ever been delved into ever since. Like I remember there being really big bugs, but who knows? Maybe there's technology has grown since then.
Maybe you've got someone out there who just knows the secret. Correct the code.
I mean, I remember there's a lot of maps that were tied like to their tick rate, like shutter doors and all these sorts of things wouldn't work unless you were playing on.
Have we lost him?
Oh no!
Oh no!
Oh, we've lost the old man from 1998.
Are gonna go as well.
Oh dearie me. Well.
Leave.
Well, that's good. Rest in peace, TurboTabs. Didn't we'll miss him. I think more or less.
He was loved.
Yeah, I think we have to just basically round it out like that, really.
Yeah,
I think we've got to the end of our announcements. I'm not going to press my luck anymore because they'll probably be coming for me next. Right, this has been your December Essentials Intelligence podcast. Ignore the fact that the last one didn't get uploaded to YouTube. We're just going to pretend that didn't happen. Mistakes were made, basically.
Delete the word.
Yeah, well, yeah, right, Nuze, give me some shout-outs. Let's end this.
Ooh, I'm looking at chat right now. Shout-outs to Wheathoofed, of course.
Good lad.
The man, the myth, the legend. Shout-outs to Hipfire. He was doing some good casting this season, as I'm sure Beater was as well. And there go the cameras. Oh, do we have a reconnect?
TurboTabs, how you doing?
Reconnect. Also, shout-out to Twitch chat main, who subbed earlier on.
What a time to lose internet, boys. I think that's the first time it's happened in like 6 months. Embarrassing.
We're more or less just rounding it off now, TurboTabs.
Okay.
We'll go to you for your shout-outs next.
I'm here for the wave.
Anyone you want to shout out?
Shout out to TFTV, all the crew behind that. Big shout out to you guys for putting on and inviting me to this show. It's very, very humbling. I never really get invited to these things. Yeah, just shout out to all the TFTV content. Also, maybe go to my feedback poll or feedback thread. On our season 28. Like, we do look at that very seriously, and we have actually very extended, long conversations in TFTV about how we want to do. God, some of the longest conversations we've ever seen about some of these topics. So please, honestly, if you've got an opinion about season 28, good, bad, whatever, just put it on there.
Make it known.
It. Yeah. That's me done.
Okay. I'm gonna shout out you lads. I'm gonna shout out Beta for very quietly and patiently maintaining the stream for us and not screaming at us when TurboTabs disappeared or when we didn't have a great deal of time to get it all set up. And shout out to your boys watching. So yeah, more or less keep your ears, eyes, everything, face peeled for more information regarding everything we just said. And we'll see you hopefully next month.